I'm dying. It's a fact. There's no need for a doctor to tell me. That farewell performance was something I insisted on doing. I don't want to disappear silently. I have to say goodbye in person.
Ozzy Osbourne's funeral wishes and the heartbreaking secret gift he left for Sharon before he died.
And there, Sharon. Sharon Osbourne, his wife, was his...
The death of Ozzy Osbourne wasn't just the passing of a music legend. It was the final chapter in one of rock and roll's most iconic love stories. As fans around the world mourned the loss of the Prince of Darkness, his family, especially his wife Sharon, was left to honor not just the public persona, but the private man who lived and loved with a ferocity that rarely made headlines. And as details of Ozzy's final wishes emerged, they painted a deeply human portrait of a man whose final acts were not about spectacle or legacy, but about love, forgiveness, and remembrance.
I met Ozzy when I was around 18, and he came into my father's office for management with Black Sabbath. So I was 18 when I first met him.
Ozzy had always been known for his flamboyance on stage, his chaotic energy, and his rebellious spirit. Yet in his final years, facing the inevitable decline brought on by Parkinson's disease, multiple surgeries, and the exhaustion of a life lived loudly, he began retreating from the spotlight. Those closest to him say it was during this time he began preparing for his death with meticulous care, but not in the way the world might expect. There were no plans for a massive public funeral, no grand gestures or on-stage tributes. Instead, Ozzy wanted something small, intimate, and entirely personal. One of his most consistent requests, which he repeated to Sharon and the children, was that his funeral not be a somber event filled with mourning clothes and tears. He didn't want the church packed with black suits and veils. He wanted color, he wanted music, and he wanted his life celebrated, not mourned. In his own words, "Don't cry for the madness, celebrate the magic." And so, when the time came, his family honored those wishes. The funeral was held at a small private chapel in the English countryside, not far from where Ozzy and Sharon once envisioned retiring. Guests arrived not in black, but in jewel tones, purples, deep reds, and silvers that reflected both Ozzy's signature aesthetic and the vibrance of his life. The service was closed to the media, but those who attended later described it as one of the most emotionally charged and beautiful ceremonies they had ever witnessed. Music was central to the experience. Rather than hymns, the chapel rang with acoustic renditions of Ozzy's most beloved song. A string quartet played Dreamer and Mama I'm Coming Home, while longtime friends in the industry, including Tony Iommi and Slash, offered impromptu tributes with unplugged guitars. Elton John reportedly played a stripped-down version of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, dedicating it to Ozzy's journey into the unknown. But the moment that truly broke hearts came before the service even began. As Sharon Osbourne sat quietly in the front pew, a family aide handed her a small box and envelope. It was something Ozzy had arranged to be delivered only after his death. Inside the box was an antique locket, tarnished but intact, with a photo of the couple from the... It was taken backstage during one of Ozzy's earliest solo tours. They were laughing, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm wrapped around her waist. On the back of the photo, written in his famously messy scrawl, were the words, "My center, my chaos, my calm." The envelope contained a letter and a flash drive labeled simply "For You." The letter, written by Ozzy months before he passed, was a stream of consciousness, confession, and love letter rolled into one. In it, he thanked Sharon for saving his life more times than he could count. He spoke about his regrets, missed anniversaries, arguments during tours, the times addiction made him someone she didn't recognize, but above all, he expressed gratitude for her strength, her loyalty, and her unwavering belief that he could always find his way back. "You stayed when the lights were gone," he wrote. "You stayed when I didn't know who I was anymore, and I know I made it hard. Hell, sometimes impossible, but you never gave up on me. That's what love is, not fireworks, but firewood burning slow, keeping us warm, even in the dark. The flash drive contained a video message. In it, Ozzy was seated at home, a few weeks before his final hospitalization. The lighting was dim, but his eyes still held that familiar glint of mischief and warmth. In a raspy voice he said, "Sharon, if you're seeing this, it means I finally kicked the bucket. Don't be mad. You knew I wasn't gonna outlive Keith Richards." He laughed, coughed, and then turned serious. "I just want you to know that every song, every scream, every roar on stage, it was always for you. Even when I didn't know how to say it, you were my anchor. And if I ever find a way to haunt you, I promise it'll be in the most romantic rock and roll way possible." Sharon later revealed that she couldn't finish watching the video the first time. It was too raw, too personal. But in the days that followed, she played it each night before bed, drawing strength from his words. Kelly and Jack also received letters filled with fatherly advice and memories that only Ozzy could frame with brutal honesty and heartfelt vulnerability. In Kelly's letter he wrote, "You've got my voice, my temper and my heart. Use all three wisely." Beyond the personal gifts, Ozzy also left instructions for a memorial concert to be held 6 months after his passing.